Come spend a day with this beautiful woman, a top fashion model. Her luxurious car, Caprice, the Grand Chevrolet.
Back in 1965, Chevrolet added a higher-end trim to their popular Impala line and called it the Caprice. The Caprice would later be renamed the Caprice Classic to further differentiate it from its lower-priced Impala sibling, and would later take over the Impala's 9C1 police package to become one of the most popular cop cars of the 1980s.
247, David, come in for a call.
247, David, that's us. See you next time.
Despite its conservative square design, the Caprice was a huge seller. That is, until GM decided to rework its B-body platform in 1991 to change from square to round, turning off many potential buyers. The Shamu Caprice was gone by 1996. That is, until GM's Holden subsidiary brought it back as a new but short-lived cop car in 2009. This is the story of the Chevrolet Caprice. This is my old car.
The Caprice Estate Wagon, utility plus luxury. It's everything you've wanted in a wagon, and at Chevrolet prices, a better way to see the USA. Lots of extras and tax and license. It sells for $5,981.67.
If you saw my earlier Top 10 episode on weird GM cars, you may remember that I included the Caprice on that list. And not just included, it was my number one. I only considered the 4th generation model that ran from 1991 to 1996 to be GM's weirdest, although a lot of you made it clear you didn't agree. Prior to the 4th gen, the Caprice had made its way to the top in popularity, so GM's redesign was too radical for those who liked its simple, if not aging, square design, resulting in sales dropping, and only staying alive as long as it did thanks to police and taxi sales.
He's in a cab.
But back in the 70s, it was the Caprice wagon I remember the best, as I traveled many miles in a 71 model my mom and dad once had. For those of you watching from Australia, you may remember the Caprice as an entirely different Holden model that sold from 1990 to 2017. I won't be covering that one here, except for the police version made by Holden that brought back the Caprice name to the US in 2009. I may do some Holden episodes in the future to cover the models GM once sold under the Holden brand. As an option package for the 1965 Impala, the Caprice Custom Sedan was not just a rebadge, as the extra $200 a customer spent on the Caprice Custom meant a heavier frame and improved suspension, in addition to the different grille and badging. More luxury was inside, complete with a fake wood dash, thicker carpeting, and better sound insulation. The following year, 1966, the Caprice moved up to be its own model, not just a trim option, and was offered in 2- and 4-door hardtops, or a 4-door 9-passenger wagon. This wagon was the first Chevrolet wagon to offer the fake wood sides, since their last real woody wagon, the 1954 Bel Air. Despite lots of accessories such as power windows and seats, and air conditioning, the standard transmission was a 3-speed manual mounted on the steering column. During its first generation, the Caprice was big, maxing out at 216 inches by that generation's last year of 1970, and offered a range of 8 different V8 engines, from a 283 cubic inch 4.6 liter up to a 454 cubic inch 7.4 liter. That last one could make 335 horsepower, although keep in mind this was before horsepower ratings were adjusted from gross to net figures that started in 1971. In 1969, the Caprice wagon was renamed the Kingswood Estate. Slight rework of the styling occurred throughout each year of this first generation, as well as now classic options such as an 8-track tape player. The second gen that started for the 1971 model year began shortly before the 1973 oil embargo, and as such, Chevrolet, along with GM as a whole, saw no problem with increasing the length of their most popular full-size B-body lineup by 7 inches, and a 2-door convertible was added to the lineup. Both the coupe and sedan had the option to be a hardtop, meaning no B-pillar. However, that option was gone by 1974. The wagon, which was still called the Kingswood Estate, had a stretched wheelbase as compared to the non-wagon body styles, and the wagon's rear suspension was changed to a leaf spring instead of typical coil springs. However, the biggest change for this generation was in the rear of the wagon, with its new clamshell door design, marketed as the Glide Away tailgate. Instead of the typical rear door that would either swing out or drop flat, the Glide Away's rear window slid upwards into the roof, and the door slid down below the floor. A keyhole on the right side D-pillar controlled both the glass and the door, and offered manual or optional powered operation for the door, and powered operation for the glass on all models. GM also offered this on its other wagons sold by Pontiac, Oldsmobile, and Buick, and was designed this way to allow unobstructed access to the cargo area in a closed garage, or when a trailer was attached. The curved shape of the rear end was designed specifically to allow the door to effectively rotate below the load floor. This complex design wouldn't make it past the end of the second gen in 1976.
See what's new today.
The B-body platform was redesigned for the third gen in 1977 and was considered a radical downsizing at the time. However, the third gen length was about the same length as the original first gen. It was around this time that the size classification started to adjust, which meant that the intermediate Monte Carlo of the same year was longer than the full-size Caprice. Also gone were many curves in the bodywork, replaced with lots of square lines that became a look nearly all cars of the late 70s started to follow with the downsizing. Under the hood, the Caprice offered for the first time a 6-cylinder engine, as well as the Oldsmobile Diesel V8 to help bring up the car's fuel economy average. The smaller Caprice led Ford to market their larger LTD as a better large car alternative. However, the LTD would also shrink 2 years later. The Caprice Coupe offered a unique rear window design that was 3 panes of glass, one large one in the middle, and 2 smaller triangular pieces folded along the side. The coupe sales were always less than the sedan, and those numbers dropped so significantly by 1983 that no coupes were offered that year, although the coupe made a comeback the following year, lasting until 1987. So few coupes were offered after 1983 that today their rarity has helped increase their value.
What does William Refrigerator Perry think of the Pontiac Parisienne?
I like the headroom.
Starting in 1983, a Pontiac twin of the Caprice was sold, called the Parisienne. Like so many other Pontiac rebadges of Chevrolet models, there was little to differentiate between the two other than badging on the outside.
You open the door, the light goes on.
Canada previously sold the Parisienne in 1981, but it was a Canadian version of the Pontiac Bonneville. The Parisienne was sold as both sedan and wagon until 1986, and the wagon stayed on until 1989. 1985 was the last year, at least in its current form, of the Caprice's lower-priced twin, the Impala. In its final years, the Impala was essentially a base model Caprice, and therefore made it more common for police and taxis than it was for private sale. The Impala's coupe and wagon would drop before that, in 1982, due to low sales. However, the third-gen Caprice continued beyond 1985, and with the loss of the Impala, the 9C1 police package shifted over to the Caprice. The Caprice was now the only remaining B-body car GM sold, with the exception of the Parisienne, as the Buick and Oldsmobile versions had either been dropped or replaced with smaller front-wheel drive cars.
Are you aiming for these people? No. Maybe that mine.
The Caprice got its last refresh of the third gen in 1986, which slightly softened the edges, added composite headlamps, and restyled tail lamps. Being the only full-size offering outside of Cadillac, the Caprice sales between 1986 and 1990 stayed relatively strong, and actually increased in its final 2 years, with over 223,000 sold for 1990. I suspect that increase was likely from police departments who preferred the Caprice over other options, and wanted to get more in their fleet while they still could. In the end, over 2.8 million Caprices were sold for the third generation. By the end of the third gen Caprice in 1990, its body style looked old as compared to newer models that were trending away from the slab sides that was popular in the early 80s. Full-size sedans and wagons were sliding in popularity, thanks to increased popularity of SUVs and minivans, so GM apparently believed that a radical new look was needed to bring in new customers. To say it shocked the public upon its debut in 1991 would be an understatement, as many likened the new design to an upside-down bathtub. Police departments that wanted to stick with GM for their patrol cars, and use black and white for their vehicle colors, named the new Caprice as Shamu, which wasn't exactly a compliment.
It looks like a beluga whale with 4 wheels to me. I just can't stand the way this thing looks.
GM didn't want to spend too much on a new platform, so underneath the 4th gen's bulbous exterior was a relatively unchanged body-on-frame that had last been fully redesigned in 1977, complete with rear-wheel drive, an option that had fallen out of favor for most buyers. Adding to the overall hugeness of its design was a decision to partially hide the rear wheels, a decision which was reversed in 1993 to fully open up the rear wheel wells, but only on the sedan, as they remained on the wagon. Keeping the wagon option body style was a surprise to many, as the minivan had seriously eaten into wagon sales.
Like its sedan counterpart, the Caprice wagon's curvy lines are the kind that you either love or hate.
GM believed in the wagon's success with older customers, and as such also offered the wagon to Oldsmobile and Buick, although low sales forced Olds to drop its custom cruiser wagon after 1992. Buick sold its version of the B-body as the Roadmaster, which had its own My Old Car episode recently.
And with this luxury of the vinyl fake wood paneling, it lets everybody know I'm classy.
With sales sagging, GM decided to try a new performance version of the Caprice, and also brought back the Impala name. Although the Impala had previously been a lower-priced version of the Caprice, The Impala SS would offer something the Caprice never had, a dedicated performance model.
Well, they just shoot out the back tire. Who you think I am, Mel Gibson?
The SS, or Super Sport badge, was last used for the Impala during its third generation in the 1960s. Under the hood, the final iteration of the Impala SS would borrow heavily from the Caprice's 9C1 police package. Along with a detuned version of the C4 Corvette's 5.7-liter LT1 V8, the Impala SS offered features that previously could only be had on police or government vehicles, such as beefed-up shocks, brakes, suspension, and cooling systems. Although the 1994 through 96 Impala SS had a dedicated following, sales of all the final B-body models kept shrinking each year after the 1991 debut, so the Impala couldn't hold on beyond the end of the Caprice run in 1996. As I noted earlier, the Caprice name was already in use in Australia and had its last redesign in 2006. This same platform would be used for the G8, Pontiac's final high-performance sedan before the entire brand was cut during GM's bankruptcy. The G8's shortened life of less than 2 model years prompted GM to consider bringing it back as a Chevrolet, but decided on a police-only version called the Caprice PPV. It was first revealed in 2009 and went on sale in 2011. By this point, Ford and Dodge were the bigger players in police vehicles, and although later front-wheel drive Impalas would keep GM as a choice for police cars, GM hoped the rear-drive Caprice PPV would improve their police car market share. But instead, the Caprice PPV was a relative flop, selling less than 16,000 from 2011 until their end in 2017. That was when GM closed the Holden plant that produced the PPV, as well as the low-volume Chevy SS, and Holden as a subsidiary was gone by the end of 2020. If you grew up in the 70s like I did, the name Caprice may invoke thoughts of the biggest Caprices ever made in the 70s, especially the wagons. Although I admit that today when I think Caprice, I think cop car, especially the square models of the 80s, followed by the Shamu models of the 1990s.
We don't want to get any innocent commuters hurt here. We got ourselves a very sticky situation.
Their name as Caprice Classic is now even better, as any remaining models are truly classics. Thanks for watching. If you like this video, click the like button and subscribe to my channel. If you once owned a car from the 70s to mid-2000s that you rarely see today and would like it featured in a future episode, leave a reply in the comments or contact me at the email shown here. See you next time.